Hello, and welcome to this episode of Code Evolution. In this episode, we are going to cover the topic of TypeScript compilation. Compiling, aka transpiling, your TypeScript files to JavaScript is easy, and we're going to show you how. So in order to cut to the chase, we're just going to start by using Webstorm, which is a great IDE, and I prefer it. So we're going to go ahead and create a new TypeScript file, and we'll just call this main.ts. In this case, Webstorm is going to ask me, do you want to compile to JavaScript? I'm going to click OK. And I'm pretty much off and running at this point. It's that simple. You'll see here in Webstorm that it has a built-in TypeScript compiler. It shows this window that says, hey, you've got no errors. And so going forward, we're going to just start writing some TypeScript. Okay, and to make it more TypeScript, we can be more explicit by giving it a string. We can then do a class. And we can then add properties. Let's do something a little bit more interesting, like a method. Okay, and so we've made basically what looks sort of like ES6. We've set up our basic TypeScript code that adds type annotations to what we're doing. And if we look here, Webstorm has combined these files into a group, and there's my JavaScript file. It was really just that easy. So for those of you who like it easy and just want to start coding, I suggest downloading Webstorm and using the free trial and using the built-in compiler. Otherwise, you can install Sublime, and Sublime also has a TypeScript plugin that takes like less than a few minutes to install, and you're off and running. For the rest of this video, we'll dive a bit deeper and look at some of the options that you have available to you when you're compiling your TypeScript. So the next thing we need to do that's strongly recommended is we basically need to create a TypeScript config. Here in Webstorm, we can click there and create one, and it gives us the basic defaults to get started. It's going to compile to a common JS format, it's going to target ES5, and it's also going to include source maps. A quick tip about Webstorm: once you've created your tsconfig, you need to make sure that the built-in compiler is aware that you have a tsconfig JSON file. So you need to enter settings. You can type TypeScript in the search, and down at the bottom you'll get the TypeScript compiler feature, of which you can see here we need to switch to use tsconfig JSON. So if we close that and go back here, let's see if we can trigger a compilation. I don't think there's any different at this point, but if we want to see something different, because it's common JS, we can export our class. And as you can see over here, it's added useStrict, and it's also exporting my class this way. So let's try some other options. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're first going to show you that instead of ES5, you can have ES6 instead. And there we go. Now we have ES6 style code instead of ES5. So if you're someone who wants to transpile from TypeScript down to ES6 and then use something like Babel or Tracer to compile your JavaScript, that's also available to you. From here on out, we're going to stick with ES5 because it demonstrates the features of TypeScript a bit more. So next, let's look at using a different module type. Like instead of CommonJS, let's use AMD. If you're unfamiliar with AMD, or asynchronous module definition, it's primarily used in web browsers to asynchronously load resources. Just like any other module type like CommonJS, this will reference your other resources properly. So without going too deep into each module type, let's try some other ones. For example, let's try UMD. which works with both AMD compatible loaders and CommonJS. It adds the proper code in order to allow you to import via CommonJS or from AMD loaders like Require.js. Last but not least, we will do System.js. And again, you can see here it properly exports to module syntax that can work with JSPM and System.js. And so from this point out, we're going to go back to CommonJS in order to demonstrate some of the other compilation features that are available to you. By now you might be asking, well, what if I want to compile my JavaScript into a dist folder? To do that, we simply need to, first off, create the folder. Now we have a dist folder. In our compilation options, we just do outdir dist, and voila. And from here on out, we won't need the previous script and map files, and there we go. Well, now you might be saying, well, I don't want my TypeScript code in the root of my project. Okay. Now, to demonstrate that this is still working, the first thing what we're going to do is we're going to delete the dist folder, and then we're going to force a recompile of the project, and Webstorm needs to refresh, and there it is. Okay, so you might be asking, well, wait a second, you had main in the root before, and now you have it in a source folder, but the source folder isn't showing up in the dist. This might be confusing to some people. Well, that's because the compiler is smart enough to know that this is where all the TypeScript code begins. And to demonstrate that, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new folder called Other, and we're going to create another TypeScript file called Other. Now if we refresh the tree, you'll see that there's now an other file there as well. So I hope that made it easier to get started compiling your TypeScript files to JavaScript. One more thing to mention is the watch feature, which is a TypeScript compiler flag that allows you to tell the TypeScript compiler, if you have it built in globally, to watch the files in your project and compile them automatically. This is great for use with plain text editors if that's what you prefer to use. As you can see, there is a long list of advanced features in the TypeScript compiler, but for the most part, the ones that I've demonstrated for you today should be enough to get you started. So lastly, I wanted to give a big thanks to people who have been active on the channel and watching the videos and giving me feedback. I really appreciate it. It really helps me to do a better job going forward. Helping people and sharing information is a big passion of mine, so let me know if there's any topics that you want me to cover, anything from the simplest of beginner videos, which I'm working on, to the most complex things like multi-threading, etc. Again, thanks so much for watching. If you liked the video, please give it a like. If you think I missed anything, please add in the comments so other people can see it, and we'll see you next time.